think we've come now in terms of turning the Internet of Things from a concept into something that's really going to be driving business in the future? And what are the remaining barriers before this is really generating a lot of profit for companies?
Sure, no, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm writing an article titled "The Gartner Hype Cycle is Going Through a Gartner Hype Cycle." Okay, because if you look at technologies today, they should be sort of crashing, and a lot of technologies aren't going through the trough of despair. IoT sort of has, but a lot of other technologies aren't doing that as much, which is a whole other conversation. But I think, Martin, my view is that I'm not a huge fan of the term, although the term was sort of coined in my lab. But I am a huge fan of instrumentation, sensing, control, intelligence. And I think it's an inevitability. I mean, we are such bad stewards of the earth, of our planet, of our businesses. We make so many bad decisions based on the lack of knowledge, lack of information. It is inevitable. How far have we come? I would say that we've made significant leaps, but they're all islands. And what is missing is a unifying vision that inspires, but also transforms businesses, transforms countries, transforms cities. Companies like Tesla, which have sort of built IoT ground up. Companies like Apple, which are embracing it. Google, which through its Nest acquisition is now beginning to embrace it. Amazon with its Echo, the Amazon Echo, I don't think a lot of people realize how transformative it is. I think it is extraordinary. We have really wonderful islands, but what's missing is the umbrella vision and the driving force. I also think that cities and countries and regions are missing a trick. I think that there needs to be a lot more thought put there, and in the absence of that, they, I think, will lose control over things that they should control.
And let me just to push you a bit on what you mean by the lack of the bigger joined-up vision. I mean, are you basically saying that the way IoT is evolving is that we're creating a bunch of silos that aren't going to be joined up?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of ground-up things, you know. The Tesla car is very intelligent. Roads are really dumb. The Tesla car comes to a traffic light, and it tries to recognize a green circle, and so that's a green light. The traffic signal is really dumb. It's actually rather stupid, right? And if the sun is behind the traffic signal, the Tesla is going to have a tough time seeing the green circle. So that's what I mean. It's sort of ground up, which is great. Innovation, it's innovative. But we do not have, as a society, a vision for where this ought to go. And in the process, in my view, we're going to end up in a suboptimal place. And the other piece of this is...
I mean, how suboptimal? I mean, are we a long way from where we should be?
Yeah, I think we're we're a long way from being optimal. But to make matters worse, the siloed approach and the sort of the lack of an overarching architecture is also resulting in a blind spot, which unfortunately, as an IoT guy, I have to say, which is security. It is a matter of time before a couple of power plants go down, and then we'll all be up in arms. But right now, ignorance is bliss, and we're sort of assuming that these issues won't occur. But you know, recently, Ukraine, the country of Ukraine, its entire grid went down. It's probably the Russians, right? The next war is going to be fought without a single bullet being fired. So what I'm seeing here is a lot of sort of ground-up efforts, but very little cohesive, nationwide, or even company-wide, society-wide thinking, and a long-term vision, long-term architecture. And
so we'll come back. But Martin,
no, I had two things to say to that. I mean, I think first of all, you look at the history of innovation. It's rarely centrally planned. You know, the Soviet Union tried that. It didn't really work very well. You know, we saw here in the results of the polls. You know, people are more confident in the bottom-up sort of ideas of workforces. And you know, as investors, we think that you know, the future is being created by lots of very innovative entrepreneurs who are coming now. And I think we are over the hype cycle in the Internet of Things. And we may be, you know, we've reached the peak. We're probably heading into the the sort of trough of depression a little bit. So people are saying, where is this thing? But there are real concrete examples now of the value that IoT creates. Sanjay mentioned some. And I think what we look for when entrepreneurs come for funding is like, let's not talk about IoT. Let's talk about ROIoT. Where's the return on this? How quickly can you get to the return on this? And there are plenty of examples now. Some of my partners are involved in a company called Jasper. They sort of incubated that from get-go. It was recently bought by a company, not just sitting to the right of me here. So Jasper is a sort of middleware platform. It began particularly for automotive to link cars to the Internet of Things, and so to be able to put sort of connect cars and be able to monitor cars. And so it is a really powerful platform. That's an example. Sanjay mentioned Nest. I mean, there is a real upsurge of entrepreneurial activity. That's where innovation
Now, if you Google Martin Giles and Internet of Things, you find this very powerful presentation called the State of the Union, which has a good look at what is actually being invested in the entrepreneurial ecosystem around Internet of Things. But where is the money going now? Where are you putting it, and how's that different from where it was 5 years ago?
Yeah, so if you look at what's happened over the last 3 years, I mean, a lot of the money is going into...
His friends have a lot of it because we bought Jasper.
Right.
So.
Yeah, thanks. A lot of the money is going into industry and sort of enterprise, so business investment. Mm-hmm. After that, it's things like wearables and the home. So it's like a sort of bifurcation. You can see a lot of focus on the industry and enterprise. That's because the ROI can be very quickly calculated there. If I was to invest in some Cisco offerings from that, I can very quickly calculate whether that's going to give me a return. In the consumer space, it's still very early. I mean, do I really need a connected refrigerator? Is that going to give me, the benefits of an extra $500 on the price? I'm not convinced yet. But things like healthcare, so wearable sensors for monitoring fetal health, for anticipating asthma attacks, those are real benefits. They're very valuable to the people who have those conditions. We can see sort of business models there.
And so what would have been the last couple of investments you guys made in this area?
So we've invested in security. I do think with Sanjay, we'll come back to this, I hope. I think it's a real issue. If we don't address the challenges that come through from security, we're going to slow down the whole penetration of IoT. And we've invested in a company that is in the sort of connected space in retail. So it produces a connected smart mirror in fitting rooms that allows you to look at and to see, you model your clothes in various different sort of ways, and then communicates with the back end of the supply chain for the retailer.
Does it slim one down as well?
It really does, remarkably. I look great.
Does it add hair?
Full
Yeah, it does.
Hair
It even gives me hair. It's remarkable.
So, Kevin, Cisco is obviously, this is a theme driving the company, that the Internet of Things is the future, and indeed you're transforming internally your workforce to prepare for this era. So where do you think that over the next 5 years the real money-making opportunities for your clients are going to be?
Well, so my job is to restructure the entirety of Cisco. So you joke it is innovation. It is to take a company where I think very few people recognize 80% of the world's network traffic originates on Cisco. We have 25,000 customers that come every single year to San Jose and visit, and the majority of those, over 70% of them, have nothing to do with IT anymore. They're business leaders that are coming, and they're asking fundamentally, what is the business of IoT? And so when you look at that, where we're pivoting towards, and so I agree, security is at its core because we're attacked 2 million times per hour. And so we're looking at that, and we're developing that code, and we're building it directly into it because the platform is the underpinning of almost any digital transformation in this IoT space. And I think so many people fail to look at IoT as a business or as a workflow. If you talk about, they've looked at it as, I'm connecting devices. That you don't monetize connecting devices, you monetize workflow, beginning to redefine what the work in the business is. And so many of the business leaders don't understand the technology, and they're having to come and learn what IoT is and what it is not before they can begin to figure out how they begin to create a monetized business.
So as they do that, where do you see senior executives actually starting to say, yes, we can invest in this and make some money?
Yeah, I can tell you the majority of them have a strategy, but not the technical wherewithal to actually execute it. Today, let me just be clear, the underpinning, and this was actually talked about a little bit earlier, the underpinning of any business strategy is the technology for the very first time. And so the majority of companies that we see trying to monetize IoT, their network couldn't even execute that strategy in the first place. So having them understand what they can execute is horizon one before they ever, because they're out over their ski tips, if you will. We've had, hospital bed as a service, elevator as a service, drugs moving towards as a service. Every major pharmaceutical company right now has a massive IoT effort around moving towards as a service.
But do you think this as a service model, this is going to be something we're still talking about more conceptually rather
No,
than reality
I
for a long
agree
time?
that it will, there has to be a common platform. And if you use autonomous driving, there's many times there's not a hardware standard within the cars. There's got to be more. This is why we bought Jasper, was because the customers were saying there has to be a unified platform. And oh, by the way, if there isn't pervasive security, there is no IoT strategy in the first place, because the DDoS attacks, the ability to to penetrate supercomputing, take down a city, is pervasive.
I mean, the theme of the panel is how to profit from the Internet of Things, and I think it's really important to understand that this transforms the traditional approach to making money out of things. So, the old way, it's one and done. I make the thing, I ship it. It's all about my proprietary sort of core competencies. In this game, it's very different. I ship something. I want to actually be able to continuously improve that thing. So Tesla, over-the-air software updates. I don't need to go and buy a new Tesla. It's automatically updated. Mm-hmm. I need to think about how do I bring in other partners. And that's very hard for a lot of traditional companies. Mm-hmm. You're not used to that. It's all about me. It's all about my core competence and how I can leverage that. And that's why you get the 120-page sort of documents that we saw. It's not just the lawyers, much though they're up there. It's not just the lawyers. So I think it's trying to really think about new business models, razor and blade models. I give something away, and then I charge for the services on it.
And as you look at big companies out there, who do you think is doing it well?
Big companies, so incumbents. It's hard. I don't know. Kevin may see more than I do. I look at the small ones.
So we're a $50 billion company that has historically been hardware. That means every one of your business processes, your policies, your system architecture, your competencies are lined up on sell and walk away. Why this is so hard to monetize is because you have to redefine all the way from the policy level up and restructure a company. It's not just build a product and throw it out there, because that doesn't define value. If I continue to push IoT solutions thinking that was ruggedized wireless instead of consumable value for a customer, I can't monetize that. You have to redefine the entirety of a company. And I do believe the incumbents, you're going to see the valley consolidate. I do believe that. I do believe that a lot of the startups have no wherewithal in the enterprise space. They're good at starting things, but aren't enterprise grade. We have 25,000 software engineers and $6 billion a year. That's a lot of entrepreneurial talent that we are pivoting towards as a service. But if we don't alter the business model that that Martin was just talking about, you don't build an IoT business. But
Martin, are you primarily investing with the expectation that the exit will be selling to an incumbent or a standalone disruptive company?
No. I mean, our goal in life is to find multi-billion-dollar independent companies that will take on incumbents and actually beat them. That's the game we're in. Sometimes exits are to incumbent companies. And I think the IoT space is really interesting, because you have a bunch of players who are incumbents who have domain expertise, and they are aware that this model is changing very fast. Exactly what Kevin was saying there. So Cisco is very aware of this. So our startups have to be very, very savvy, very focused, and they have to think about how they are going. It's almost like a sort of jujitsu kind of strategy. You know, I can't go and take them head on because they're going to crush me, but can I take them from the side? Can I find innovative ways to do that using connected devices?
Now, Sanjay, I mean, your students that are thinking about working in this area, where are they going to? Are they going to Martin's startups, or are they now being found good roles that will be satisfying for them in big companies?
I think at MIT, the vast majority of students think about startups. Let me just tell you, these people speak a different language from you. I mean, I'm just put it out there. Just imagine if this was 1990, and through a wormhole, you heard two teenagers say to each other, "I will WhatsApp my location to you." Imagine everything you'd have to accept for that to make any sense. Okay? You would have to understand that there's a thing called a network. It'll go wireless. There's a thing called a smartphone. It has a big screen. It has the world's maps in it. Those big things called GPS that sit on boats will be inside this. The world's maps will be inside this. There's this thing called social networking, right? And
So when a company like GE has these adverts for trying to recruit people by saying you can actually make a difference in the real world rather than make these silly apps in Silicon Valley, I mean, that's not having traction at the moment?
No, I'm afraid not. I mean, I think we're sort of seeing a peeling off of a generation. It's very hard to attract these people. And, you know, I want to just connect that to your earlier question. I call them old growth companies as opposed to new growth, to use a Forrest term. GE is making the right noises. But I really think that the object as a service, the product as a service model is a mind shift. In fact, to me, the first big IoT company was Zipcar. And I say it was the first big IoT company. I know the founders very well. I was just talking to them recently. Is because and it comes back to what you said, Kevin, if you take IoT away, Zipcar cannot exist as a company. Okay? In other words, the business is the fragmented sort of rental is enabled by wireless, you know, all that stuff, the web, et cetera. If you took that away, all the cars had to be together, which is why rentals look the way they do, right? So to me, if you don't speak that language, it's sort of like the Matrix. It's like Neo, you know, where he sees these characters as opposed to the real world. If you speak that language, those ads don't make sense to you. If you speak that language, you think of the world differently. And you go to venture capitalists, and you say, I have a way to change the way in which people buy shoes. I have the way to change the way in which people rent equipment. And you go do it.
And then we say, prove it, right?
And then you say, prove it. Yeah.
It's all great, right? But you have to, there was a discussion earlier on about platforms. And it's like, yeah, everyone we see is, we want to be a platform. We are a platform we are this. And I understand that. It's because the models I discussed earlier, you know, push towards an ecosystem play. You want to be that platform. But it's that you're a platform when your customers think you are. Yeah. And it's hard. So you need to focus, where are you going to land? When you come out of MIT, you have a great idea. Can you prove it? Can you prove that there is a real gap in that market? And I think with IoT, there's been so many cases we've seen where that just hasn't been the case, which is part of the reason we had the hype cycle.
Now, Kevin, yeah.
You know, platform is an overhyped word, but I know I prefaced that, but I'm about to tell you when you look at all the failed IoT plays, you know, for years we were joking about something called Internet of Everything. Well, it is everything. Everything is going to be connected, but if you have if you don't recognize it as workflow versus just connecting things, you've got a flawed business strategy. And the platform, that became a material thing for us because we're now going to convert networking to a platform, because if it's not self-learning with that security all the time, people can't execute. That was a material shift for us to go, we have to design from all the market failures, but recognize where it's going. And so we actually invest $2 billion a year in startups, and seldom do we ever buy them because we want to see what that talent's doing. We may buy one every now and then. I agree with you. The ones that become stable, you buy those. You don't buy the little startups that don't have enterprise grade, but you have to look at the entrepreneurial talent that is widely dispersed today to actually have a true IoT strategy.
Now, I want to, in a moment, come on to talk about the platform creation and then the privacy issues, but I want to quickly get a sense from each of you about, we mentioned the Amazon Echo, and there is this sort of consumer hype around some of these products at the moment. Where does each of you think most value is going to be created over the next 5 years? Will it be that kind of consumer product, or will it be more the kind of GE producing an extra 1% efficiency in trains that allows them to make 7 billion extra profit for their clients?
I think it's going to be two things. One is the consumer has proven herself to be the most innovative buyer over large companies, frankly. So I think consumer it's a tough market. I see the innovation there as what I call massively parallel innovation. It's like barbarians at the gates. Thousands will try, one will succeed. The one who succeeds is going to hit it big. And the consumer space is one of those where there'll be a lot of activity. I actually think that heavy industries, what GE is going after, a few of the companies going after, there is an opportunity there, which is object as a service, an engine as a service. We sell thrust. We don't sell engines. It'll happen, in my view, in things like power plants. It'll happen in turbines. It'll happen in engines and so on. So it'll be bifurcated. I don't see a very clean win right now.
Martin?
I mean, I don't think you can draw a sort of like a very clear sort of distinction between sectors. I think there's opportunities everywhere. What I do think is, coming back to what Sanjay said at the beginning, it's building connected experiences. So I got in my car to come to the airport at SFO, to get on the plane, to come to Chicago, to get out, to pick up a car, to get to the hotel. There's a whole series of experiences I had through there that I would love to have been linked up. For example, when I get to the airport, what are the queue times for getting on the plane? What are the queue times at the Starbucks?
There's an Amazon skill for that.
There is a skill. So this is what I'm saying. It's like you're starting to see these connected experiences, but you need sensors everywhere. So as soon as those sensors become sort of ubiquitous, we're going to have a whole new set of experiences that have opportunities in the consumer space. Yeah. In industry, I think we talk a lot about the predictive opportunities and as a service, but I also think in the sort of enterprise area, so like smart buildings, we talk a lot about, hey, how much sort of monitoring can we do of our energy consumption, of what's going on in terms of security around buildings, but they're all in silos. We don't share that information. It'd be really useful to know, I'm this hotel here in Chicago, what are other hotels using in terms of electricity at this point in time? What kind of sort of security systems are there? Are they linked? Is there any way we can work out whether we can sort of network stuff? Thinking through this networked experience, that's where there's going to be, and already we're seeing some real value going to be created.
Yeah.
Kevin?
I think that in the consumer space, I agree with the notion of Echo. One of the most creative things that I've seen in the Valley in a long time is like personal concierge. Imagine voice-based concierge in every single hotel room. Not just, it's connecting everyone. And when you see that actually working, it's mind-boggling.
What's different about that?
Walk into a room and start to literally ask a question to a device that looks like Alexa that starts to connect your experience across the city of Chicago, all through voice dictation in a highly secure, personalized manner. The time saving to you is amazing. And it's within months. And so if you look at the enterprise space, the answer about the autonomous driving, the answer is yes. Those CEOs know it. I'm in Germany next week. I can assure you they know it. But they don't disaggregate your question from smart cities that have been mentioned up here, because if the car generates 2 petabytes of data per year, the fabric that will run that smart city is radically different. I've been at Cisco 18 months, and the number of requests for smart city infrastructure is 10x what it was.
So tell me, once the vision of starts to be understood, what are the remaining barriers to? I mean, Sanjay identified some at the start. What needs to be done to overcome that lack of join-upness that?
I'm going to go back to the word ecosystem. Most companies look at their own company and they don't know how to manage in an ecosystem environment and work. Well, how you monetize in an IoT world will become so disaggregated beyond your traditional business walls that is a core competency people are going to have to manage.
I mean, is this something where we have been celebrating the bottom-up grassroots approach, but is this something where governments should be coming in and trying to set some standards at this point? Sanjay?
I strongly believe, well, you need to be careful. I don't want the government getting too deep into this. With RFID, the government tried to get into it and I had to push back and testify in front of Congress and so on. But I do think that we need test beds. Okay? That's about all they should do. They shouldn't set standards. They shouldn't regulate. Just back off. So with that caveat, I do think we need test beds. The internet would not be what is today were it not for ARPANET. Okay? So we need test beds. We need a smart city test bed where we can put that damn smart traffic light on. Now, right now what's happening is all the smarts are being accumulated into like the Tesla. And the problem with that is it is, in my view, suboptimal and dangerous. There was a paper just in the last couple of months of how you can hack a Tesla with a laser because the LiDAR gets confused or the camera gets confused. So we really need to think at this point, not 5 years ago, the government needs to step in and say, okay, let's look at it from a societal perspective.
So what would it look like, this test bed?
Singapore is a great example. I built a university in Singapore. I know Singapore well. They are really taking the lead in saying, let's make Singapore, and Dubai as well, let's make Singapore, Dubai is saying the same thing, the test bed for smart self-driving cars. Okay? We will go put the smart traffic lights so you can take advantage of it. We will make the dividers smart so the car doesn't have to guess where it is. Right?
But even there, they're not joining that up with the hotel and with the shops and the...
You've got to start somewhere, and I think that in a small place like that, they can pull it off. The problem is that in retail, for example, you have smart beacons, you have RFID, all these things. You got to get the malls to buy in. They're small retailers, so they might not be able to invest. They might do it to a mall. But I do think that in the United States, we need to find an area where we do a test bed, maybe a national park, a city, a town, and try and see how everything works together. We don't have that happening.
I mean, I come around the other way and say, hey, look, we as an industry, we as entrepreneurs need to find solutions to these very pressing problems. I come back to IoT security because what I worry about, I mean, Sanjay mentioned, it would only take a couple of very serious incidents to provoke sort of mass panic, is that we'll end up with like a Patriot Act for IoT, something that's rushed out really quickly because there's been some incidents.
Done by a tweet, I would imagine.
Done by a tweet, probably. And all of a sudden, what we're actually going to do is we're going to crush innovation because it's sort of like, we'll come out with some standards that sort of put something in writing that fits the exact incumbents but doesn't allow more innovation. So we just have to be really careful. But I reckon probably within 2 or 3 years, maybe about 25 to 30% of cyber attacks will come through connected devices in the enterprise. And that is going to be a wake-up call. We shouldn't be waiting for government. We should be dealing with this issue.
So, Kevin, 2 million attacks a day on Cisco. What chance have we of creating an unhackable system? And if we can't make it unhackable, what do we do to make sure at least it doesn't end up with mass panics and things of that kind?
Historically, you've looked at security as a defense of the network. If you take Target and everything else, they sat in the HVAC and then they sat in the refrigerator units and then they went after your money. So the average number of security vendors in the enterprise space is 82. And they all sit outside of the network. So IoT is not possible if that security doesn't sit in the network. So what we're doing is we monitor online bidding for hacking. We monitor hacking key codes. We actually take our 2 million attacks and we literally learn the keystrokes, and we're building that into what we're calling digital ready architecture of self-learning networks, because if we don't learn from those and constantly study where security is running through the network, everything that these two gentlemen have talked about will happen.
Right, I should add, actually, that's a wonderful point. In fact, your 2 million attacks are an asset because you're mining them, right?
Correct.
But another sort of twist of that is Trojan horse. That web camera that you brought home, you just brought home some hardware, you have no idea where it came from. It has some firmware, you have no idea where it came from. The Trojan horse is another issue, which is another reason the security has to be in the network.
So 559 billion emails originate on Cisco, of which 87% of them are infected. To that point right there, they are plugging it everywhere.
So Martin, do we really want this thing? I mean, it sounds pretty scary for all this Trojan horses and
Of course
hacks.
we want. I mean, the potential upsides.
But how are you going to reassure me that the things you're investing in aren't going to just make my
Well, some of the things we're investing in are designed to make sure that the other things you invest in are secure, or as secure as can be possible. I think two things. First of all, entrepreneurs who are building connected devices need to think very carefully right at the beginning about security. How are you going to secure these things? Can you do over-the-air updates so that something that sits in a connected refrigerator or a connected camera can be upgraded and when security problems appear? And secondly, we need to think very innovatively about where to put security. I think the network is a very important area, but maybe it should be security in the chips themselves, right from the bottom of the stack upwards. And there are a number of companies who are working on those kind of innovations, including startups. It's a very exciting time. I am confident, quietly confident, that we will find solutions. It's a cat and mouse game. The hackers will always get that little bit better, and we need to get better as well. But I just hope we don't get a Patriot Act on the way.
There's two things that Sanjay and Martin have said that I would sort of summarize this way: is security is synonymous with innovation in any size company today. And if you don't have security at the forefront of your IoT strategy, you don't really have an IoT strategy as far as I'm concerned.
So let's take some comments, questions from the audience. A gentleman over the back there, if you stand up. And please do say who you are and keep, as VJ likes to put it, no long-winded speeches.
Jeremy Sanders with Sienna. You were talking about the return of IoT. How do you measure that? Is it something as simple as revenue? Is it adoption rate within a customer? Or is it them working with you as a service with that customer?
I mean, ideally, it's top-line revenue because that's immediately measurable, okay? But it can be any number of measures of efficiency. We had GE Transportation on here, and we're selling sort of locomotion as a service. So how much more efficient can your locomotives become as a result of putting sensors on them and then analyzing the feedback and being predictive about when maintenance is going to occur? So it's all the way from revenue down to the very bottom line, the costs that sit in between. And it could be, hey, look, it's also, we're able to produce new services, new things that we can offer to customers that make sure that they stay on longer. So the lifetime value of the customer increases. There'll be a whole sort of set of dimensions, and these tend to be sort of very easily measurable in industrial environments.
And maybe I'll add that I think that the business models are going to change. So someone's going to get hurt. Some numbers are going to get hurt. When you go from capital cost, capital expenses to subscription, sales targets are going to change. Commissions are going to change. The way you count is going to change. And initially, it'll be ugly. But the ones who made the transition will survive.
Yeah.
A gentleman in the middle there.
Hi, I'm Alberto Roque. I'm the CIO at American Electric Power, and we're one of the major electric utilities in the country. And you can imagine I spent a fair amount of time thinking about cybersecurity. So my question is, are you guys going to take care of the problem for me so I don't have to worry about it anymore?
Yes. How's that? I'll pick up your order on the way out. Honestly, so if and this is, as Sanjay said, if we don't learn from the actual attacks that are happening in the network, then we're just studying them. And I think that's what a lot of companies have done, is they've studied the attacks versus learning how to actually run that through the network. And there is something that I'm sponsoring right now. When you start to look at smart cities and you start to look at smart grids and you start to look at supercomputing and you look at DDoS, we're actually investing collectively with the university and the United States to look at supercomputing around smart grids and cybersecurity attacks and how you begin to approach that from all the advances of IoT, autonomous driving, the fabric-based network. We're pulling that all together right now.
And I would say, Alberto,
and I will pick up your order. Sorry, Mark.
I'd like to pick up your order. No, if you're not, you don't want to be worried about cybersecurity, you're in the wrong job. You've got to change because the hackers, those problems will always be there, right? This is the new world we're in. Having said that, there are ways, and I think we will see more innovation coming down the pipe in the next 3 years than we've seen in the past 30 in the area of IoT security. I mean, the study that I did, Matthew mentioned earlier on, I looked at at 2,335 deals that have been funded by VCs in IoT startup areas, there were only 45, which is about 20 firms for IoT cybersecurity. That's nothing, right? We are going to see, though, a massive increase in those deals over the next 3 years, and I'm very confident within there will be companies that can help solve the problems that you face, which are significant.
Well, Sanjay, I mean, hearing that question and thinking about your earlier comment about Ukraine and the power supply crashing, I mean, I guess one instinctively thinks Ukraine is probably not as advanced an economy as America, but have we basically just been lucky here that we've not had?
Yeah, we've been lucky. First of all, a lot of people think IoT is in your future, and that's false. You are in the world of IoT. If you have a SCADA system that's connected to a computer, that computer is connected to the internet. Trust me, you're IoT, right? So there was recently a Jeep Wrangler was hacked and driven off the road, shortly after I'd written an article actually predicting that. It wasn't one of my students.
You're getting really good.
It wasn't one of my
Hacked by MIT.
But so I think IoT is here. We've been very lucky. We're extremely sloppy. And so to be intentional about IoT is at least recognizing you're there and taking some, safety measures. Yeah. But I think this is a very serious problem.
So if you think about almost everything is becoming IP enabled. I talked with a gentleman the other day, and I won't say the industry, but it's a very large ship, and they took over an engine just to show that they could. They just halted the engine just to prove that they could. So if they can take the engine, then they can take the steering and everything else.
I mean, I swear, if I have a group of 12 PhDs, if they decided to do damage, they could do a lot of damage. I'm just telling you. I mean, it's scary. Don't think you're not an IoT. We're there today.
Mm-hmm. So we have a question from the app, and I don't know whether any of you are behavioral economists, but the question is, how much do you think behavioral economics can help us predict whether an IoT widget will be adopted or not? Anyone want to take that?
I mean, if you look at things, I mean, if we're talking incentives to change behavior, if my insurer says to me, hey, look, if you wear I don't know, maybe you have some kind of cardiac issue. If you are willing to wear one of these heart monitors on an ongoing basis and give me data about your heartbeat and what's going on, then I will reduce your insurance premium for your life insurance by X%. Would I adopt? Maybe. Depends how big that X% is and how much I feel I want to share that kind of data. So there are models where you can see, and I think probably in insurance we're going to see a lot of them, in terms of, hey, can I actually put something in the car that you will allow me to monitor your driving patterns, and if I work out you're not someone who screams down Highway 280 in Silicon Valley at 90 miles an hour and then puts the brakes on at the last minute, actually I will give you a break on your insurance, on your car insurance. Those are the kinds of sort of behavior modifications one could see that might lead to faster IoT adoption.
Another question over there.
Hi, Praveen from Puri Consulting. My question was about privacy. How do you protect from people being able to stitch knowledge from different devices and figure out your routine and figure out your health? For example, find out if you have a bad heart or something.
I'm going to start with most people listen, everything that Cisco does around the network, we don't control it. We don't own any of the data. It's a matter of how do we help people structure the data. And what I think most people are fundamentally doing today is they're recognizing that their data is their fundamental asset. They've got to figure out how to monetize it and protect it more. And going back to the security perspective, those that are actively telling what they're doing to protect the individual and their security are the ones that are benefiting the most. The ones that have a personal strategy around protecting the individual are doing very well. I also think that you're going to see the likes of the EU and others begin to marry together digital IDs with blockchain. And when that happens, you've got a highly secure where each and every one of you become a route to market. Not an individual, but a very IoT-centric route to market.
Yeah, and what I'll add is when we did RFID some 20 years ago, the same concerns came up, and they're very valid concerns. I think it's a much bigger concern with IoT. Yeah. Just this morning, there was news of a teddy bear, a cloud teddy bear that got hacked. It's a product. And so you have to look at privacy in two ways. One is, are you worried about the hacker in some country, foreign country, getting your data, or are you concerned about Google getting your data? I think we do need to be concerned about Google getting your data, but you need to be even more concerned about that hacker. So while we need to take care of privacy, and there will be regulations, and there has to be thought about it, security to me is a much more deadly thing right now, because it's a form of privacy loss that can, there is no one person to point at to protect yourself from that, because it's your ID that's stolen. Over time, we will need some very clear regulations on privacy. For example, if you sell your Tesla, who owns your driving record? Tesla, you, or the person who bought the car? And these are questions. I mean, I feel that you need to have a giant shredder in the sky and a digital cartridge that you pull out that you own with your data. And we need regulations for that. Again, I'm a little worried about getting too ahead of that because I think the government will overreach, legislative branch will overreach. But I think these things are in the offing.
So we're almost out of time. I want to ask each of you two questions for brief answers to sum up. One is the graduate question. What's the plastics of the IoT? The one area that you say, okay, go if you're going to invest in anything, this is where the money's going to be made in the next few years. The second is if we come back here in a year's time and have this conversation, do you think we're going to be more worried or more encouraged by the progress that's being made on IoT, and why? I'll start with you, Sam.
I'll make it very quick. I think the plastic in this world is actually vision. To be able to conceive of Zipcar in 1998, that's a magical moment. To me, Uber is actually an IoT company, because once you take the cell phone and the driver away, self-driving cars, Uber is IoT. So that's one. Vision to me, the ability to reconceive the experience and to deliver value and workflow to the consumer. That's the thing. A year from now, we'll be more excited and more terrified, both.
So where would I go? I would look for A, security, it's the new plastics, but B, I would also look for areas where you can combine emerging technologies in innovative ways. So for example, we talk a lot right now about artificial intelligence and the ability to predict, use machine learning algorithms to predict outcomes. I think the gentleman who asked the question about how can we secure energy power plants, the ability to sort of look forward and try and predict where attacks may come from is going to get far better, and we'll have sensors and more connectivity to be able to then react immediately to the intelligence that comes through there. Secondly, next year, where are we going to be? My guess is we are going to be considerably more enthusiastic about the applications that we're seeing, and we are also going to be considerably more perplexed by the challenges they pose in areas like privacy and security.
So I agree with the vision. I do think that more large enterprises, I'll speak to automotive, the people that are deploying automotive solutions today recognize that autonomous driving has to be replaced with about 40% more value in the car. So you're going to see more and more of those large enterprises partner with Silicon Valley and startups, and you're going to see the large mainstay enterprises like Cisco and the startup community really come together with more unified IoT strategies. I think that we're further towards having an IoT platform. Ours grows at 4 million customers a year. We have 10 million cars on it. So you're seeing everything that they're talking about.
And after automotive, what's the next industry?
I think just manufacturing, healthcare, all those are radically coming. The disparity of IT architecture in any hospital is just that. It's very disparate, and you're going to see it come together. More and more hospitals are trying to prevent you from becoming a patient today than they are to actually treating you in it. And then I think the aspect is those leading classes of how you see a BMW or a Daimler or Bosch actually driving IoT solutions and challenging their industry will create more of a roadmap for others to actually follow.
Well, Kevin, Martin, Sanjay, thank you for a stimulating and actually quite alarming conversation. Thank you very much.